we overcomplicate things. We start comparing ourselves to other people instead of just going with the flow, that this is my own personal journey, that whatever happens is happening for its greater purpose. The obstacles that are coming with me on this path are meant to get me to a higher level.
All right. Welcome to the Allius Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nikhil Sharma, and I'm so grateful to have y'all here with us today. In today's topic, we're going to be discussing why do we make life so complicated? I think it's a topic that a lot of our viewers and listeners can relate to. And joining us today, I have two of my good co-hosts, friends. I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Drummond. I am a mindset coach as well as a business development and career coach.
What's going on, gang? I go by the name Fit Like Chris. Call me Chris. Functional fitness coach and mindset coach.
All right. Well, look, thank you guys for joining us today. And Chris, when you came up with this topic a couple of weeks ago, I thought it was just the perfect topic for what was going on, at least in my life, during that period. Because, when we're going on these journeys and we are, in my case, making a transition from one career to another, we are doing so many things to make it much more tougher on us than we need to be doing. So I'm glad that you brought this up as it has a personal resonation. But, I think it's something that everyone can relate to is, why do we make it so hard on ourselves? We're like self-sabotaging ourselves from getting to where we need to by making life more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, the answer is usually the first thing that comes to our mind, which is, I don't know why we don't always listen to that first idea. We begin to cycle through all the ideas. And next thing you know, we have a plate full of options. And too many options leads to overcomplicating things. It leads to anxiety. Not having any options leads to hopelessness, feeling like there is no hope. So there's definitely a fine balance, but we don't want to overcomplicate things.
Completely agree. And I think you actually had the core of the argument in your first statement when you brought up why do we make things so complicated when the first thing we think about is usually the correct answer. Usually the first thing we think about has us at the center of the idea. And if we don't have the self-esteem and or confidence to see it through and believe in it, now we're thinking about other options because we do not believe that we at the core can sustain the idea that we've had. So I think this is an absolutely amazing topic. The simpler you make life, the simpler you make relationships, the easier and smoother the sailing.
Yeah, I agree. And I was kind of thinking about how do I personally make my life much more tougher than it needs to be? And, I thought about it and I came up with about 4 different ways that I do that. And the first way is that I overextend myself. And, that happens from growing up in a family where they told me, always say yes to helping someone else out. So as I grew up, anytime someone needed help from me, yes, sure, I'll be there. My friends are in town. I got to work tomorrow. F it. I'm going to come out with you guys. I need to make sure I'm showing you the best time possible. Right. And so what happens there? You keep overextending yourself. Your energy then starts getting drained and then you crash and burn. Right. And that could have been prevented by what? Setting up some boundaries, learning to say no. Right. Because anytime I say yes, that's me extending a part of myself to a situation that's not going to be necessarily for my highest good. So I need to scale that back and understand what's going to be mutually beneficial for me and the person that I'm engaging with. And so our bodies, like you said, Kevin and Chris, our body, mind, and gut tell us like what we should be doing. Like my initial reaction at times is like, no, I shouldn't be going out. But for some reason, I ignored that gut intuition and I'm like, you know what? All right, my friends are in town. I got to go out. I have to show them a good time. Like they're looking to me to do that, right? I'll start saying all sorts of things in my brain to convince myself that my gut is wrong.
That's like Spot on. I think we've all been there. We've all been there. We've all had the answer. And then I don't know if you feel this way, Nick, when you do that, but it's like the voice that's the voice that says, nah, you really shouldn't go out with your friends. The volume gets turned down lower and lower and lower. And the other voice that's like, yeah, I'm going with my friend. You know, it like takes
Yeah,
over. Next
yeah,
thing you know, it's like, how did I get here? How the hell did I get here? I hate that.
right.
It's
And then
annoying.
the second thing that for me is seeking perfection. I feel like, again, growing up in a society where things are based on grades, things are based on testing scores, we're always in competition. We're always seeking to make ourselves better and better, which is good. We need to be doing that. But there's a point where you need to understand that this is as good as it's going to get for this time period, and you need to keep pushing forward. I oftentimes found myself focusing too much on the nitty gritty of the details, and that often kept me stuck in these cycles. So for me, it was about letting go of perfection and realizing that the work that I put in for now is good enough to get to the next level, right? And then the last two things for me are, avoiding toxic relationships, right? Like, being in any kind of toxic relationships drains you. It literally takes your energy away from you. But yet, we tend to hold on to these relationships for whatever reasons, because they're family members, because they're close friends since I knew when I was growing up. It's because I'm married to them, right? So it just makes things harder for you to detach. But these toxic relationships start playing in your mind, and they start living rent free there, right? And so you end up getting more and more drained. And when you're that drained, your brain's not thinking right? And so you're making your life way more complicated, than it needs to be. So again, setting boundaries, identifying and being aware of who these toxic relationships are. And so when you actually remove these toxic relationships from your life, it's like a weight has been lifted off of your shoulders. You feel so good about yourself. And so it's important for us to identify them. And it's like the most natural way for us to get energy again, right? Like
Yep.
we want a natural fuel of energy. Put a boundary up. Watch how when you call your energy back from these vampires, like you feel so good. And it's like you can pour that energy back into yourself and watch yourself blossom, or you can pour it into healthy relationships that you are looking to cultivate.
I'm so happy that you used the word drain and then you followed that by using the word energy. Because when you brought up the word drain, I thought of ourselves as a battery. And when we wake up in the morning, we have 100% charge of our batteries. And then we decide where we decide to share that energy that we have. And every person we interact with, every relationship, we're having to distribute that energy. But we can have the type of relationships where we get that energy back, just like we pour into other people and we share our energy with others. People can share their energy with us. But a lot of times we create toxic relationships, like you said, Nick, where we're pouring energy into others and all they're doing is just draining our batteries. So we should be very intentional about where we're spending our battery life. Otherwise, we'll be at a low battery halfway through the day and we won't have any more to give. And that's when, we start having those emotions of hopelessness and having those emotions of, oh, I'm not good enough, because you've spent all your energy. You shouldn't have. We didn't listen to our gut, like you said, Nick. We didn't listen to our intuition. We didn't listen to that quiet voice in the background saying, you probably should not answer that phone call, because the things that we listen to, we're not listening to. We're listening to the guilt. We're listening to the doubt. And we're listening to, oh, well, what would they think if I did X, Y, and Z? So I'm glad you used that word choice, because we have to be conservative when we think about where are we putting our energy, who are we sharing it with, and what's draining or depleting our energy, because we only have 100% of power every single day, and it's up to us to choose where we use it.
That was one hell of an analogy. Like,
Sure.
seriously. I think that energy from other people is probably the number one reason why I've overcomplicated things in life. And now, I'm not saying this to not take accountability for myself. I'm saying it as kind of what you're referring to, Kevin. Like, people are they're in it. We're all energy, like we're not human beings, we're spiritual beings. Another conversation. But anyway, people are well, for me at least, were the number one reason that I would overcomplicate life, because everyone has their own perspective, their own way that they would like to do things. And it's feedback. When we take all that in, I'm just repeating everything that Kevin said essentially, but like we just take all of that in and it obstructs our view. It's kind of like we're a pot of gumbo or something, and everyone is their own spice. And we may not want to put the cumin in there today, but we did. Next thing you know, we got a bad batch, and we got to pay the price.
Yep. And what do you have to do when you try to make the batch right? You try to add water, right? You try to add water, and now you're diluting who you truly are and what you were meant to be and what you would have been had you not add too much cumin, right?
Yep.
I like that gumbo analogy.
And it just takes for us to, I think, a solution to no longer overcomplicate things or start to change it. Nick, is what you said. It's a blend. You said being able to accept the fact that this is as good as it's going to get for the time being. That allows us to move the ego out of the way, because our ego wants to be great. The ego wants to fight, right? But if we could say, listen, I'm giving the best I can do. This is where I'm at. Cool. No ego in the picture. And then silence. Silence. You don't have to meditate on, you don't have to do that, but maybe take a break from taking in all that outside external energy. Maybe take a break from your phone. Maybe take a walk. Take some time to just tune back into your thoughts. And it's not about getting things done. It's just about restoring your balance, restoring that state of well-being that we wake up in every day.
Yeah, I agree. And what you're describing right now, Chris, is being present. And, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do to help ourselves make our lives much less complicated is being present, because we have a past, right? And our past sometimes weighs on us, and we end up being in similar situations like we were in the past. And so oftentimes we then start reverberating to what happened last time I was in this situation. And that affects our judgment on how we should handle the situation now, right? And so that's the first thing you need to do is forget about, not forget about your past, but put your past behind you. You can't change that anymore, but you need to be absolutely present on where you're at right now. So you're making the least complicated decision you possibly make, right? And so it's that being in that presence. And how do you get into that present moment? You're taking nature walks. You're disconnecting yourself from your phone. All these things are great methods for people to do to keep themselves right where they need to be, which is in this present moment.
Agreed. And when Chris brought up this topic, he also brought up the topic of faith, about how it takes faith to simplify your life. And I wanted you to share with everyone why exactly you said that, Chris, because when you mentioned it, I'll be honest, I couldn't connect the dots. But after you were able to share exactly what you meant by that statement, everything clicked.
Yeah, well, I will sum it up into very few words and just say that less is more. And it takes faith, whether it's in the higher power, whether it's in yourself. It takes faith to allow things to fall into place and to not try to do everything on your own. Cut out all of the subtasks, cut all of that out. You have your focus, and that's it. Allow that to be what it's going to be. Simplicity equals faith. Faith equals simplicity. It's very simple, but it is hard to grasp, Kevin, because we're so used to doing things.
Yeah.
Try harder. Do more.
I love
that. Yeah.
And that faith, the way I was looking at when you said simplicity equals faith, I was looking at it in the terms of myself and thinking about how many times do I like to control situations? How many times do I always need to know what the outcome is going to be prior to me doing that situation? Instead of relying on faith that is going to that it's going to turn out the way it needs to turn out. So oftentimes, before I would make a decision, I would start thinking a million miles down the road, like, oh my God, for instance, when we started Allignus, like, how am I going to get funding to create this? Is this really even possible? Like, why would I even be thinking about doing something like this? I'm a doctor. I can't be an entrepreneur, you know? And so all these thoughts start running through your mind instead of being present in the moment and having faith that, you know what, this is something I've sat on for several months. I feel like it's aligned with my purpose and my soul's true calling. And I just need to take it day by day. But I know if I do that, I can accomplish something really powerful.
I love that. I love that. If it's aligned with my purpose. And I know now more than ever that if we do everything aligned with our purpose, everything falls into place. But like you said, Chris, we complicate things. We make it so complex. And like I said earlier, a lot of times it stems from that confidence in ourselves. But when we rely on our purpose, now it's not relying on us. Like you said, higher power, the creator, everything aligns. Everything comes together when you're living in your purpose. So yeah, both of what you guys said was right together, aligned.
One more thing that I just want to say. I don't know where the heck I heard this, but I feel inclined to say that when you pour a glass of water, the water becomes the cup. And yeah, it does. You know, that cup can be a bowl. It can be a cup. It can be a tube. It can, let's just be water. You know, I guess that's how I'm feeling this week. Let's just be really fluid. And that is what the simplicity allows. Things falling into place or falling how they may, we're just being fluid.
I love that. I just started imagining myself being on a river and just being in the water and just flowing with the current of the river, right? And allowing ourselves to go with the flow. Oftentimes, we're the ones who are causing resistance in our own flow because of the things that are going on in our brain, right? We overcomplicate things. We start comparing ourselves to other people instead of just going with the flow, that this is my own personal journey, that whatever happens is happening for its greater purpose. The obstacles that are coming with me on this path are meant to get me to a higher level. They're meant to teach me something, right? So when you're in that mindset, life becomes a lot more easier. And it's something that, you know, I think, you know, is the way we should be living.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I think that's a great way to, you know, kind of end the podcast today. Great topic. Looking forward to having you guys all back next week. Until then, peace.
Peace.